I hope you're having a wonderful morning on this cold, cold February morning. Just be thankful we're not in New England where they've had 95 inches of snow. But I do got to ask you, have you ever been in that position where you ever felt like you just couldn't get anything done? Like you weren't able to get enough done in one day?
Yes.
Or maybe you felt as though your time management skills were equal to the money management skills of Bernie Madoff? I know for me, early in my career, I felt as if I could get to work, and each and every morning that supervillain that Ashley introduced us to a couple weeks ago would appear. Look, over there, doing absolutely nothing. It's super procrastinator. I would go to work with the best of intentions, and then suddenly I would have the productivity of a fart. Because a fart cuts through your underwear and doesn't even leave a hole. And then you're stuck there in the stench of your own shame.
Oh, dear.
The only things I would accomplish were those that were motivated by the stress of knowing that if I didn't get at least this much done, I could potentially lose my job. Then one day during a job evaluation, my benevolent boss explained to me that I had to get more productive. He told me that I was intelligent and capable of so much more. He said, what you need to do is start making a list of what you need to accomplish every day. I was working in South Georgia. So I tried it. And the next day I went in again with the best of intentions, and I made the list just like he said. Next thing I know, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Seeing everything I had to be done in that day in writing was just so intimidating. Here's this real long list. What am I supposed to do? Truth is, I wasn't just overwhelmed, I was almost paralyzed. Some days I'd make the list and feel overwhelmingly paralyzed because here's more and more that I've got to get done. Then I discovered the book, Eat That Frog. That's where the concept's going to come from today. Eat That Frog. It's by Brian Tracy. Really good book. You can tell it's a good book too because it's got it written in, it's got notes and all in it. It's something that I've referenced for years. In fact, it's a book that I highly recommend to anybody who's wanting to improve within their career. It changed my life without a doubt. It introduced me to a couple of very important concepts. One being the 80-20 rule, and the other being how to make a list. I had been making lists, but it was how I was making them that was keeping me from performing at a higher level. So first off, let's discuss the 80-20 rule. It's also known as the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle states that for many events, roughly 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes. That was the way that Brian Tracy presents it really got my attention because he pointed out that 20% of customer activity results in 80% of your sales. We all got to make money in business, so that got my attention. But the one that really got my attention was 20% of tasks account for 80% of what you actually do. In other words, a lot of times, we're just wasting our time. First off, Brian points out that we should all start by facing the reality that we will never catch up. It's a true reality for me, I know that today. We feel overwhelmed because we can never catch up and get everything done. Again, that's just the reality of the working world nowadays. Since getting caught up isn't a realistic expectation for time management, that's right, even if you are super efficient, you're still not going to get caught up. So Brian looks right at you and provides one of the greatest secrets of time management, and it's this. You only get your life under control to the degree to which you stop doing things. Wait. The degree to which you stop doing things? He was speaking directly to me. I get to stop doing things. That's brilliant! But what does that exactly mean? Well, think of it this way. Stop trying to do everything. First off, stop trying to do everything. Let go of expectations and pressure of doing everything. It's unrealistic, and truthfully, it's ultimately self-defeating. Next, stop doing things that don't create high value. Focus on those things that create high value and add to your quality of life and the quality of life of others. To improve at time management, you need to recognize which or what 20% of the stuff on your list delivers 80% of the value. Now about that list. To make the list, everything comes down to one thing. Select your most important task right now and start on that task right now and keep working on it until it is done. According to Brian, we tend to treat the biggest and ugliest priority task like a frog. Grab it. We put off touching it, much less eating it. Grab it. Brian says just the opposite. Do the worst first. He finally got my attention. Do the worst first. Actually, this means do the most important thing. Do the biggest thing, the ugliest thing, the hardest thing. The one thing that can have the greatest impact on your day. Do it first and stay with it until it's done. This is what Brian describes as eating that frog. Because truthfully, think about it. Eating a frog would not be pleasant. It'd be all muddy and dirty and yucky. Ugh. When making a list, Brian suggests to start by prioritizing your items in an A, B, C, D fashion. Now, over time, I've come to understand this concept is A is for absolutely has to be done, and it absolutely has to be done today. B is for before I move on to anything else, before I even think about touching these items, I need to make sure that all my A items have been completed. C stands for can't someone else do this? Or can it wait? And D is for does it need to be done by me? That's just a fact. After you've made your A, B, C, and D list, then it's time to prioritize each item within each category. So you need to prioritize your A's, then your B's, and your C's, and your D's. Of course, the D's, again, doesn't need to be done by me. You'll find that over time and with practice, making such a list becomes easier and easier. In fact, it becomes second nature. I've gotten to the point that I can't really start my day unless I start making a list. And I've even gotten my staff to the point that they call me every morning with help in making their own list because they need to know my perspective on what they find to be most important. So in conclusion, don't be a fart at work. And don't let super procrastinator win yet again. And don't succumb to that feeling of overwhelming paralysis because you've got so much to do. Remember the 80-20 rule. 20% of tasks account for 80% of what you do. And stop trying to do everything. Make a list, but prioritize the list. And make sure you prioritize the list accordingly. Got to eat those frogs first. Don't even bother with the D's. Always focus on the A's, the items that absolutely need your attention. And start with your first item, the A's, before you finish and do anything else. But most importantly, eat that frog.